Welcome to another session here with Concertina Styles and Smiles. Today from near Glencoe, you could say, we have Jeannie Enabnit. And is that your hometown, Jeannie?
No, not at all.
Well, tell me, where were you
I'd be
born?
glad to.
Okay.
My father was Navy. He joined up before World War II. My mother was civil service, and they met at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center in about 1939. So I was born in Waukegan before Pearl Harbor, and because the war erupted right after that, we constantly moved. So I lived East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, down south during segregation, Northwest Coast, California, 3 times in California alone. So I grew up all over.
Okay. So, fast forward a little, how did you ever get interested into a button box?
My mother played piano and piano accordion by music. My father played piano accordion not by music. So there was always music in the house. I remember during World War II when we lived in Brooklyn Brownstone, there were blackouts every night because that's near the coast. And I would have to
California
go.
coast?
This would be the East Coast.
Oh, East Coast.
Brooklyn, New York. And I would have to go up to bed alone in the dark at night. But Daddy would be downstairs playing the Cuckoo Waltz so that I wouldn't be afraid. So the music was always there. And especially after World War II, when there were many, many European immigrants, many of them came to the Chicago area. Waukegan and North Chicago received a lot of those new people, and they had tons of music in them. So we had music all the time.
Okay.
But in about 1967 or so, my father bought a button box. I was no longer living at home. I had my family already. But when I discovered that, I just was fascinated by it. So he kept it and played it all the years that he had remaining. But after he died, I wanted that, and my mother let me buy it from the estate. And that's how I got started.
Do you remember the first tune you played? Maybe it caught you a little off guard. Would you want to play one of the first tunes?
I'll talk about how I learned. I sat there with a 4-row and didn't know where to begin. And I thought that since I lived in a Czech-Polish area where there were lots of musicians, that someone would magically show up and I would instantly learn how, but that isn't how it is at all. But instead, I went to the Gibbon Polka Fest in 1993, and there I met Franklin Lundock, who brought students and a band of button boxes from Iowa, and who had an instruction book. So I bought his book. I think it was $10 or $12, and I paid him for a lesson, which was another $10, which was all I had. But we got through half of that book in the hour that I paid for.
Okay.
And then I went home and worked at it.
When you mentioned the Gibbon Polka Fest, was that the one right here
Yes,
in Minnesota?
definitely,
Okay.
because by then I was living in Minnesota.
Okay.
I moved to Minnesota in 1980. I bought a little farm in LeSueur County, and then in 87 I bought the place where I am now, which is in McLeod County.
Okay. Well, let's hear a tune, and then we can always continue the discussion.
Would you like a tune out of the earliest book? Or how about a Monroe Czech song?
Whatever you want to do.
This is called Lazy Farmer. But I'd like to say, if I could, a word about these button boxes. They're actually the first bellows instrument ever made. They were based directly on the harmonica. So really, the first button box was a harmonica powered by bellows. So each row is like a harmonica. So to learn a button box, you concentrate on one row at a time to begin with. So here is a 1-row song called Lazy Farmer.
One of the first ones you learned.
One of the first.
So, how long did it take you to get to the second row?
The Franklin Lundock book starts you out in your second row. He recommends a 4-row, but his book will also work with a 3-row.
Now, is this 3-row? I never.
This is a 4-row. It has
Okay.
4 keys. They are G, C, F, and B flat. To change keys, I don't have to change fingering. I just have to move up or down a row, opposed to any other bellows instrument or even the piano. The fingering doesn't change, the key changes for you. So Franklin starts you out in 1 row, the second row, and then he gradually introduces notes in other rows so that you learn first to play a scale. But then you learn to play in one direction. So even though it's perfectly proper to play a button box,
And that was all in that first book he did?
in and out.
Yeah.
With having 3 rows or more, you can play fluidly. So even though the old timers stayed in 1 row and they stayed in back and forth, that music is just as authentic and very traditional, but there were limitations because you didn't have your sharps and flats. So songs had to be somewhat simplified.
Now, how many row button box did you start out on?
I started out on a 4-row.
On a 4-row.
But dividing them up into 1 row at a time and then learning how to pick notes out of other rows, you can start with whatever you have.
And you learned your first numbers out of that book, or was that an instruction book on how to play?
Well, there were little songs in there. Franklin, who's no longer with us, was born Czech and went to school as a 6-year-old speaking Czech and punished for it. And as many people can relate to who were the children of immigrants. He vowed that he would preserve the Czech music, which he could see needed something in writing. So as a present to his mother and father, he created a series of method books. And he took little familiar songs, changed them slightly to make them simpler, and put them in written form. So Franklin's books include what's called standard musical notation, but then he introduced another word called tablature, which is a cheat sheet of which button, which direction, which row. But once a person becomes comfortable with how to find the notes they want, then
You don't need that cheat
most of
sheet
us
anymore.
most of us don't go back to the book. I would say, at least in this country, 90-some% of button box players play by ear.
Is there still music published for a button box?
Well, therein lies more difficulty.
Oh.
The button box, unlike the piano, or the piano accordion, or even the concertina, is not standardized. There are as many keyboards of button boxes as there are individuals in some cases, so that this button box is not identical to someone else's. So the music that will tell me how to play notes on this button box won't help the person who has a different key configuration. I've heard that there are 30 or possibly as many as 80 different right-hand keyboards. And then there are people who customize them. In South America, where the button box is popular, they want different notes that we don't have, so they'll take some of these and have them retuned. The basses are often changed to suit an individual player. So that the best I can tell people, and I hope I am reaching people, that if you have your hands on a button box, play with it. In this outside row, if you only have 1 row, it's the top 2 buttons on the outside on the left side. And anything you do in this row will sound good with those 2 buttons. You can't go wrong.
So going back a little farther, is this the original box that you got from your dad?
No, that was an F, B flat, E flat, A flat, which is very popular in Nebraska, and it's in Nebraska right now.
You said F and B flat?
And E flat and A flat.
A flat. Now what key is this?
This is a G, C, F, B flat.
Okay.
The different preferences vary according to the nationality. Here in central Minnesota, this is what we play.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to Nebraska, they want F, B flat, E flat, A flat, and nothing else. As a second choice, they'll pick up A, D, G, C, but that's far down the list.
Mm-hmm. Why do you suppose it is? Why a different preference in Nebraska than, say, here?
Because of different instruments which were traditional in that nationality's music.
Mm-hmm.
So the Czech people use a lot of brass, and brass goes really well with B flat, E flat, A flat.
Okay.
At least that's how I understand it. Whereas up in our iron range, which are primarily Slovenians, although there are 40 nationalities who originally moved there to work in the mines, it's C, F, B flat, E flat, and that corresponds also to Ohio. They want that C, and they don't want to go up any higher than
Mm-hmm.
B flat. It's just preference.
Would you want to
Preference
play
and
another
tradition.
tune?
Yes, what would you like to hear?
I can't think of a
Now,
tune.
I know. We were doing well.
Yeah.
Right, let me look at my cheat sheet here. Well, I really like the Polish kid. His name is Don Szylkoczewski. He is just a wizard on a 3-row honer, as well as piano accordion, which is his real instrument. But he creates little things that he just throws off, and this one is called Bang Bang.
I'm sure you made people get up and dance.
I hope so.
Yes.
Actually, I got the name wrong. That was actually jalopy.
Okay.
They're very similar.
You make it look so easy.
They're easier than they look. Once again, for people who might have one at home, the idea is to not be afraid of all those buttons, but to concentrate on one row at a time. And again, anything you do in that row, linked up with these 2 top buttons on the left side, you can't go wrong.
So before, when you mentioned on the iron range, they have different key. You ever live up there, or how did you get to know that?
How I got to know everybody is I started a button box club in 1994. In the fall of 1994, I contacted every country radio station in central and southern Minnesota and announced that there would be a group to form a club at my farm in October of 1994. One person showed up. He had an identical button box. We had a good time swapping tunes back and forth. And he said, "Here's $20, start a club."
And that started it.
That
the
started
club.
it. So from 1994, with 2 members, we grew. We had a high point of over 250, but we are an aging population, and we lose them. But I try very hard to find all the people that play that I possibly can, and we're strong at about 220 right now.
And it is still going monthly?
It's definitely still going. There's a monthly newsletter that some people have been taking it since 1994 or 1995 or 1996. Then there's a Concertina Newsletter. We started meeting in Glencoe at the library, and everybody came who played everything.
And that's also your club?
That was all through the initial Button Box Club. And since so many of them were concertina players, I thought we need 2 meetings and 2 newsletters. So the Concertina Newsletter has been about 90 to 95 people, pretty steady over the years. But we have a new program. Did I tell you about it, Smiley?
No, let's hear it. This is open to anybody that...
This is open to anybody, but better yet, last fall in Wisconsin, a man came up to me and said, "I'm a member, right?" And I said, "Well, you took the newsletter for a while." And he said, "Well, that makes me a member, right?" And I thought, fast. I thought, why not? Why not? Why not reach out to people who play and recognize them for that? Their contribution to music history, their ethnic musical heritage, their own families. So we started a program just this last fall, fueled by a generous contribution from Art Altenberg in Mosinee, Wisconsin. And anyone who plays concertina or button box will receive by mail a full-size certificate identifying them as a contributor to the music.
Okay. How often is that newsletter published for the concertina?
Every month.
Every month,
Yeah.
also.
So about 325 a month go out. We have members in
I was
quite a
reading
few
this
states.
before. Did you want to read off any of the...
Sure.
they're located?
Or you can, Smiley, you have a good voice.
I don't have my glasses on.
Alaska,
Check this
Arizona,
out.
California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, New Hampshire, North Carolina, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming, and 1 in Canada. So that enables us to call ourselves an international association of button accordion enthusiasts.
Because of Canada.
Because of Canada.
Now, there must be, 48 states you mentioned?
Well, there's some I don't have.
Missing 2, right?
Yeah.
I didn't hear Hawaii.
No, I don't have anybody in
Okay.
Hawaii. But it's word of mouth. It's if you know somebody you'd like to have recognized, definitely let me know. Or if you are interested in a newsletter, also let me know.
Yes, we can do that. We'll post the address on the
Yeah.
end of the film here.
It'd be nice. Because there are very few young people entering this field, at least in the U.S. In Europe, it's just wild. There are children of all young ages and teenagers and young adults playing button boxes like crazy in Europe.
You mentioned before South America is pretty
South
big.
America, yeah.
Do you know what part? Brazil, Argentina?
Argentina and Paraguay, I think. I know
Okay.
someone who plays button box. In fact, went to South America and lived there for 2 years to learn it, to learn that style of playing.
I would venture to say that the Germans, the Europeans that fled Europe before World War II, was that, or before
Very
World
likely.
War I?
Very,
Because they did the same with the concertinas in South
Yeah.
America.
strong group of Germans in Texas, but they weren't fleeing from Germany. They were immigrants
Okay.
who went there. So yeah, and a lot of Czechs in Texas.
Texas?
Very, very good Czech button box music.
All over Texas, or was it in a certain part?
Central Texas primarily.
Okay.
So there's just no telling where they'll be. The button box was forgotten and kind of looked down on. Most of the original button boxes were just 1 row or maybe 2, and you couldn't play a full scale, or you could, but you couldn't do very many sharps and flats. So the concertina, being a fully orchestral instrument, being able to play all the notes in all the keys, people who mastered that often looked down on people who had to compromise the song in order to play it at all. So they were not just neglected, they were looked down on.
Have you ever, do you play any other instruments? Have you ever tried a concertina, brass, clarinet, saxophone?
Nothing brass, but I did start out playing the piano by ear when I was little, I think about 4. And then I got some lessons from my mother. My sister and I both got piano lessons from my mother, who was very careful to teach us proper musical theory so that we understood all those marks on the pages. And a big treat when she would go to Waukegan, that would be in a later time period after the war, we didn't get to go downtown with her, but she'd bring us back a piece of music. And we would fight over who got this piece and who got that piece and be jealous. She was jealous because I got Country Gardens. And her song was Rolling Hoops, which was much simpler.
Do you still play that tune? When you swipe?
I can't play Country Gardens. It's been too long. I tried one day and I thought, oh my God, no, I've completely forgotten it.
Now in Milwaukee, didn't you say there's a button box club or a concertina club, a bar that's specifically for that?
There is a bar in Milwaukee, formerly known as Arts Concertina Bar. Now
That was the name of it?
that was the name of it, and concertinas and button boxes were allowed, but no piano accordions. Because in case many people may not know, but this came, its simplified version, came before every other bellows instrument, including the German concertina, also known as Chemnitzer, the English concertina, the Anglo concertina, the Irish. All these things were a development of that original invention, which had 4 buttons and bellows. Nothing on the left side. Just that's all they had.
Okay.
But they quickly realized that this was a good thing, so the concertina started with those 4 buttons that I just played and went to the next row. And you'll find those 4 and these 4 in the right hand of every concertina.
Okay. But why wasn't piano accordions allowed in this bar?
Because they're not diatonic, and they take no skill to play.
Yep, I understand.
Because these 2 are related, this being the parent or the inspiration for that. And they're traditional.
The bar's still going?
Yes, it's now owned by Andy Kohansky, and it's still open to all instruments now. I think you can go there with a piano accordion and not be kicked out.
Okay. Let's hear another tune.
Let's see.
Oh, you got your cheat sheet right.
I have to look at my list here. I like this one. This is called Because Your Blue Eyes Blinked. It's a little bit difficult. The fingering is a little fancier, but I like it.
Let's hear So we're going to close out this session here with Concertina Styles and Smiles. Again, we have Jeannie Enabnit from Hutchinson. And what would you like to close out with?
I would say, if you want to play music, pick up something and play with it. Get
Yes,
comfortable with
yes,
it, no matter what it is.
I agree with that.
If you already play music, don't ever quit. Don't put it away. Don't think you're not good enough. Don't think nobody cares. If you do play button box or concertina and you'd like some recognition from our clubs, we'd be glad to give it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially play for young people, because that's how this is carried on. We can't all be professionals, but we can all extend the music.
Enjoy music, yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Smiley.
That's it for today.
Thank you, men.